In this video, we'll be going over the midpoint formula. By the end of this video, you'll be able to find the midpoint between any pair of points in the xy plane using something called the midpoint formula. Before I give you the midpoint formula, let's just look at an example to see how we might find the midpoint between a pair of points in the xy plane. So in this example, we want to find the midpoint between P1 and P2, where P1 has coordinates -4, 3, and P2 has coordinates 2, 1. Let's start by plotting our points. P1 has coordinates -4, 3, so it's about here. P2 has coordinates 2, 1, so it's about here. Before we start thinking about the midpoint, let's just think, how many units do I have to travel horizontally and vertically to get from P1 to P2? Horizontally, we have to traverse this length. Vertically, we would have to traverse this length. Let's try to be more specific about the lengths. P1 has x-coordinate -4 and P2 has x-coordinate 2. So how far we have to traverse horizontally would be the distance between -4 and 2. And that distance is 6. To figure out how far we have to traverse vertically, we look at the y-coordinates. P1 has y-coordinate 3 and P2 has y-coordinate 1. So we went from 3 to 1, which means that our vertical distance is 2 units down. Okay, so to get from P1 to P2, we travel 6 units over to the right and then 2 units down. If we want the midpoint from P1 to P2, wouldn't it make sense to take those distances and cut them in half? Instead of going to the right 6 units and down 2 units, instead we'll start at P1 and go to the right 3 units and then down 1 unit. This point that we got here is exactly halfway between P1 and P2. And looking at the coordinates here, we see that the coordinates are -1, 2. What you might notice is that -1 here is halfway between our two x-coordinates, and 2 here is halfway between our two y-coordinates. Another way to phrase this is that the x-coordinate of the midpoint is the average of the two x-coordinates, and the y-coordinate of the midpoint is the average of the two y-coordinates. Let's try to verify this computationally. We said that the x-coordinate of the midpoint is the average of the x-coordinates. The x-coordinates here are -4 and 2, so the average would be -4 plus 2 divided by 2. The y-coordinate of the midpoint is the average of the y-coordinates. Our two y-coordinates are 3 and 1, so the average would be 3 plus 1 divided by 2. Simplifying this, we have -2 divided by 2 and 4 divided by 2. And simplifying this further, we get -1, 2, which is what we expected from our picture. Generalizing what we learned from this example, we know that the midpoint between P1 with coordinates x1, y1 and P2 with coordinates x2, y2 is midpoint equals the average of the x-coordinates, which is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, the average of the y-coordinates, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So that's the midpoint formula. Let's try to use this formula in an example. In this example, we want to find the midpoint between P1, which has coordinates 1, 3, and P2, which has coordinates 5, -2. Using our formula, that the midpoint is equal to x1 plus x2 divided by 2. x1 and x2 are the x-coordinates of the 2 points, so that's 1 plus 5 divided by 2. And then y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So y1 and y2, those are the y-coordinates of our points. So that's going to be 3 plus -2 divided by 2. Simplifying this, we have that the x-coordinate is 1 plus 5, which is 6 divided by 2. So that's going to give us 3. and the y-coordinate is 3 plus negative 2 divided by 2. 3 plus negative 2 is 1, and 1 divided by 2 is 1/2. So our midpoint has coordinates 3, 1/2. So that's how we use the midpoint formula to find the midpoint between any pair of points in the xy plane.